Welcome to Pathways to Success, the program that supports our micro, small, and medium enterprises here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel. I'm Mai Rodriguez. In 2014, a proud Filipino watch brand dedicated to reviving local watchmaking was founded. Drawing inspiration from historical designs, the brand combines vintage style with modern innovation. Each timepiece is carefully assembled in the Philippines, showcasing its commitment to quality and Filipino craftsmanship. The name is Ibarra, a brand that has earned national pride with its watches worn by notable figures, including athletes, ASEAN leaders, ministers, and even a Philippine president. Today, we will have the first of 2 episodes on Philippine-made watches, and we are excited to have on the show the founder and CEO of Ibarra Watches, Nico Moreno. Hi, Nico.
Hi, Mai. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you on the show to talk about Ibarra, which is a brand that makes us all proud to be Filipino. It's a brand that you'd want to showcase to the world. Tell us, how did Ibarra start?
Okay, so I founded the brand in 2014. Prior to that, I was a collector of vintage watches. I love to know the stories of how these watches came about, and I thought that I was spending a lot on watches, and why not just try to create a brand that reflected those aesthetics but with more modern pieces so that you can avoid too much servicing.
So, because the Philippines is not known for watchmaking, right? But it was your passion for vintage watches that got this started. Tell us, from this idea in your head, how did it start? How did you put things in motion? What was your first step?
Okay, so my first step was to actually, well, to see the aesthetics, to design the watches, and to figure out how I can make it more Filipino, despite that the challenges in the industry that we have here. So I was thinking about incorporating a Filipino story into it, so a Filipino touch. So apart from branding it Ibarra, which is quite reflective of our national hero and his works, it's also about trying to work with local technicians who can actually help me put these things together.
So these are all locally assembled watches, but it could rival all the big names in the watch industry out there. And when did you realize that watchmaking was your passion?
I definitely think that we can rival, especially a lot of brands out there. I learned that this was my passion just because I took up physics when I was in college. I was in a class in classical mechanics, and I learned about springs and how these things and how gravity and different forces of nature affect timekeeping. That kind of engrossed me into watchmaking, horology. And when I was working in corporate, I had a conversation with my dad, and he mentioned that it would be nice if I actually owned a watch. And he recommended the brand, and I researched about that brand, and I loved it. And from then on, it kind of really put me in that interest of really collecting watches at the start.
Because there are so many elements to a timepiece, right? Tell us about the designs that you brought here, and what was the watch that was worn by President Duterte?
Yeah, the designs that we have are mostly vintage inspired, because we wanted our timepieces to be worn by people from different generations. So it's not just you who can wear it, it can be your dad, your mom, your grandfather. It appeals to a lot of different age groups. And just an example of the watches, the designs that we have, is like this watch. This is called the Plaridel. This was the watch that was worn by former President Duterte.
And this came out what year?
In 2017. And he endorsed it. He wore it in a press conference prior to his trip to Russia, and then after that, we were asked to make watches for the ASEAN 50 that was given, the watches that were given to the world leaders, the guests, when we were hosting it.
And beautiful. What was the reaction when it was first shown?
Well, we didn't have the first hand information of how it was received, but the office was very happy when they saw the watches because the events were closed door and we didn't have any opportunity to see firsthand how the reactions were.
Well, the name Ibarra, how does the name reflect what you wanted to achieve with the brand, your vision?
Yeah, Ibarra, as we all know, is reflective of one of the characters created by our national hero. So he reflects probably a very elegant demeanor. Say in our terms, we call it the first glance. So people would make, you make people want to glance at your watch. So it's beautiful. The follow through. So it has to have substance. It has to have the quality in it. So that's why it's one of our pillars. And then of course the Filipino story, the Filipino touch. And we started with simply just assembling the watches, and we want to see how far we can go on from there.
Yeah, and I noticed some of your watches are named after Filipino heroes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you were the first Filipino watch brand assembled locally. How has this set you apart in the market?
It makes us unique. So for some people, others may call it like a novelty, but we embrace it. We're not known to be a watchmaking country, but everything has a start. In my opinion. So unless someone tries to take on that leap and really launch themselves out there, nothing will ever happen. So I just told myself that if I don't start it, nothing will ever happen to the Philippine watchmaking industry. So the reception has been mixed, but we've dealt with some success. I mean, as can be seen in the different events that we've had, representing also the country.
Yes, beautiful watches, very elegant, and yeah, when I held one in my hand earlier, there's a good weight to it.
Yes.
Right? So, and you're very young, you're only 34 years old. So looking back to when you started this business, what were the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you tackle them?
Well, for one, it's market acceptance was a big challenge for us, since, as mentioned earlier, we're not a watchmaking country, so other global brands will always be there, and we would always be subject to being compared to them. But for us, we just had to keep on pushing. We had to make that runway longer. Just try to face those storms ahead, and just to have a very good team that would work with us through all those challenges. So yeah.
Well, what do you think are the design elements or philosophies that are crucial to making a timepiece?
Design elements, simplicity for one thing is one of the things that I take priority on when I design the pieces, because old vintage watches are more simple, and it just has, the proportions of the watch has to be well thought of so that it would fit the risks of the target person or target market that you're planning to sell those watches to.
Really classic pieces,
Yeah.
right, that could stand the test of time.
Also, yes.
Yes. Okay, lots of great insights into the business of watchmaking, but let's take a quick break. When we return, we will explore the key milestones and achievements of Ibarra, Manila. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Pathways to Success. Today we're exploring Ibarra watches with founder Nico Moreno, and we're thrilled to discuss its milestones, especially as it celebrates its 10th anniversary this September 5. Congratulations on that milestone.
Thank you so much, Mai.
Okay, let's talk about the SEA Games collection, because in 2019, Ibarra was named the official commemorative timepiece for the 30th Southeast Asian Games. Tell us about this collection. What elements did you incorporate here to represent the SEA Games?
Yeah, so this watch here in front of us, this one is one of the variants that we actually made for the Southeast Asian Games in 2019. So this one was a special watch commissioned by the Philippine Olympic Committee. So we made a few watches for them as well. So we made 3 variants at that time. And yeah, we were invited by Fisgok to be the official commemorative timepiece. So it was a proud moment for us. And we wanted to create a very nice timepiece given the very limited time that was given to us. So to make it elegant, we had a guilloche pattern dial there. So you look at the dial, it's very intricate, which is also reflective of vintage and traditional designs in watchmaking. So those textured dials always add a little bit of elegance to the watches.
Yeah.
So we made it fitting for the Southeast Asian Games that we hosted then.
Really a proud moment. So how did that impact brand recognition showing in the SEA Games?
Yeah, well, for us, we were seeing our logos in the stadiums, and and even in the press conferences, our logos was. I mean, it was quite overwhelming in terms of our brand. I mean, for any brand to be part of such a historic event and to represent the country, we were definitely lost for words at that time.
Yeah, such a big moment for sure. So there are other designs that you have here. Tell us about the Sucesos, which was released in 2019, and this was inspired by a watch believed to have belonged to our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal.
Yes.
Tell us about the impact that it has made to your brand.
Yeah, I guess the Sucesos over here, it made us even more Filipino. Since I'm also a member of the Knights of Rizal, the Order of the Knights of Rizal, we were fortunate enough to be able to have conversations with the descendants of our national hero, and they actually told us about a watch that belonged to Dr. Jose Rizal, and they showed it to me, and then I asked them permission if we can recreate it. And because as part of the Knights of Rizal, we had activities like the Jose Rizal Model Students of the Philippines, which we supported. So we used that ideally to help support the program. But we had to stop production of this watch because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Most of our suppliers overseas had troubles as well. But I'm proud to say that for the Sucesos, the ceramic coating was actually done by some of our gun manufacturers in the Philippines. We had an industry for gun manufacturing. They coated what they make, and this is to help reflect an antique feel. We actually coated this in the Philippines.
With such a nice connection to history and of course to our national hero, no? Such a special tribute. How was the design process for this watch?
Oh, we've had like 3 or 4 iterations of prototypes before we actually came out with the design that we wanted. So that was one of the most challenging part. I think it was a 2-year process or a waiting time before we actually have something more concrete to present to people.
Let's talk about the pandemic. You said you had to halt production because of the pandemic, but tell us about the challenges back then. And I would imagine there would be a demand for a revival of this design.
Yeah, actually, even up to today, I just posted it on my personal Instagram, and some people have been commenting. The pandemic was really a hard time for us, and that's when we realized also that it's hard when you don't have all the manufacturing in-house or in the Philippines. We had to downsize our operations that time. And this model, unfortunately, was one of the models that had to stop in production. But there were a few pieces that came out that were sold. So if there are people who have those right now, they're lucky.
In the secondary market?
Probably it's in the secondary market, but I think we were able to release around 5 to 8 pieces of this model. So if they're one of the people who have it right now, they're lucky because we stopped.
Yes, very lucky. Okay, the other designs out there, the Trofeo, which marked the debut of Ibarra's block font logo. As I mentioned, like there are historical influences in your design elements. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so these over here are the Trofeo models that we have. So as a watch enthusiast myself, I wanted to have small watches. I love to dress up before wearing suits and all, especially when I was taking my MBA. I would like to have a watch that's thin, that can just sit under the sleeve of my shirt. So we had some nods to the Plaridel, the Breguet numerals, and then we've had an enamel dial over here, which is quite also reflective of old watches as well. So it's a traditional material that has been used in watches. And the block font is a nod to other old watches from before, even Swiss brands like Longines, Cartier, and other watch brands, even Rolex had block fonts before. So we wanted to emulate that kind of a font in Ibarra. So some Ibarra watches will carry block fonts.
Very sophisticated and elegant, something that you'd want to carry on your wrist. We'll have more to explore about your watchmaking journey, but we have to take another short break. Stay with us. We've got more to cover on Ibarra's recent developments and future directions. Welcome back to Pathways to Success. We're still with Nico Moreno of Ibarra, Manila. Okay, Nico, of course, turning your passion into a business involves constant learning. Let's talk about your grad school in Tokyo. You moved there in 2021 for grad school and to explore Japanese watchmaking. Tell us, what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so I moved to Tokyo in 2021 because I felt that I needed to take a step back because of the challenges. So it's a changing industry, times are changing, and I took my MBA there. And on the side, I've been talking and discussing with other Japanese watchmakers in terms of the techniques, the handmade craftsmanship that they've been doing. And I've been learning a lot, and I've been trying it on my own. So you can say that I've been self-studying a lot over the past 3 years.
And your first project after Tokyo was the Kaminari timepiece.
Yes.
Tell us about this, because I heard you spent 100 hours.
Yeah.
100 hours on this timepiece alone.
Yes, actually, this is the Kaminari over here. So the movement is actually a base from a Swiss movement. It's a very strong movement. Usually, it's in watchmaking schools. It's one of the projects that they do during their stay. And for me, I modified the bridges of the movement, and I did traditional handmade techniques like black polishing, flat polishing, anglage. I did perlage on the other prototypes that I did, and I hand frosted it using a technique that I learned from one of the independent watchmakers in Japan. And here it is right now, and it looks pretty nice.
From your learnings in Japan, how did you grow? How did you evolve as a watchmaker?
The perspective has changed a lot. Being in Japan, being in a very mature market in terms of watchmaking, really opens your eyes to a lot of things. It makes you engrossed and interested, and even try to learn and investigate on how things are being done. And for me, I just fell more in love with watchmaking since I've started living in Japan. And for me, it's something that I can one day bring back home to the Philippines, because there is not a lot of watchmakers in the Philippines. So it's something that I can aspire towards.
So how do you envision the growth of the Filipino watchmaking industry, and what support is needed for Filipino artisans?
Support, well, from what I see, we have a lot of technicians who can handle watches already. They repair very sophisticated watches. Some of my technicians are very talented in servicing watches. It's just about educating them and immersing them on real watchmaking techniques, and we can actually have a lot of other artisans in the Philippines that can actually make watches. And for me, the learning that I'm getting from Japan, which I can also bring back home, or maybe if there are other Filipino watchmakers who are working in horology houses overseas, these are skills that they can bring back home to the Philippines as well. So I think there's promise, as long as someone really needs to take that leap of faith and try to jump into it, have that courage to get into it. I mean, I jumped into it. If others might want to start, and I'll be very thankful that I was able to inspire them.
Very inspiring story indeed. Thank you for joining us today, Nico.
Thank you.
Part 2 of our feature on Philippine-made watches will be next week. Do watch out for that. That's today's episode. To entrepreneurs out there, keep following your dreams, aim high, and stay focused on your goals. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Thanks for watching Pathways to Success.